A billionaire stopped at a red light and saw the woman he left behind, now homeless with a baby.
I'm here for my 10 o'clock meeting.
They rejected her for bringing a baby, not knowing she was once the mind behind million-dollar ideas. She was cleaning the floor, while the man who broke her heart watched in silence.
Excuse the interruption, everyone.
They mocked her presence, until one man spoke and the room fell silent. They fired her for being unfit. Hours later, she walked back in as their owner. They judged her silence as weakness, until justice stood right in front of them. Not heavy rain, just enough to blur the city into reflections and make people impatient. Inside a sleek black SUV sat Ethan Blackwell, a billionaire whose name moved markets but whose face few people recognized. He liked it that way. No headlines. No noise. Just control. Beside him sat Vanessa Clark, his fiancée, polished, elegant, wrapped in a designer coat that cost more than most people's monthly rent. She checked her phone, then sighed. "This weather is ruining my mood," she said. "Honestly, this city has no class anymore." The pedestrian light turned green. People crossed in clusters, office workers, students, street vendors. Then Ethan's eyes locked onto one figure. A woman. She pushed an old stroller with one hand while holding a thin blanket over a baby with the other. Her coat was faded, her shoes soaked through. She moved carefully, protectively, like someone who had learned the hard way that the world didn't slow down for people like her. Ethan's breath caught. Lena. His ex-girlfriend. The woman he had once planned a future with, before money, power, and ambition convinced him he needed more than love. The stroller got stuck in a crack in the road. Lena bent down, struggling as rain dotted her hair and jacket. A car behind Ethan honked loudly. Vanessa scoffed. "Unbelievable. If you can't afford basic things, maybe don't bring kids into the world." The words hit Ethan harder than the horn. Lena freed the wheel, straightened up, and hurried forward as the crossing light began to blink red. She never looked toward the cars. She didn't complain. She didn't ask for help. She simply crossed, like someone used to carrying everything alone. The light turned green. Ethan didn't move. "Ethan." Vanessa snapped. "People are waiting." He drove forward, but his hands felt numb on the steering wheel. That same morning, Lena had woken before sunrise. Her small apartment was cold. The heater barely worked, and the walls were too thin to keep out the city noise, or the reminders of how far she'd fallen. Her baby, Noah, cried softly as she warmed the last of the formula. Rent was overdue. Her phone showed missed calls she couldn't bring herself to answer. Once, she hadn't lived like this. Once, she'd been the woman people admired, the one dating a rising entrepreneur, the one with plans, confidence, and a future that looked secure. But when Ethan's company exploded and his life became about deals and status, she became an inconvenience. She wasn't aligned with his future, he'd said. Not ambitious enough. So she left quietly. When she later found out she was pregnant, she didn't tell him. Not for money. Not for pity. Not for permission. She chose silence and responsibility. That day, she had an interview. A receptionist job. Low pay. Long hours. But it was honest work. She dressed neatly, wrapped Noah carefully, and stepped back into a world that judged her before hearing her story. That evening, Ethan dropped Vanessa off at her luxury apartment. "You've been distant," she said, adjusting her earrings. "Don't tell me you're thinking about that woman." "She's someone I used to know," he replied. Vanessa smiled thinly. "Well, people end up where they belong." The door closed behind her. Ethan stayed in the car, staring at nothing. For the first time in years, his success felt heavy. Because the woman the world had just dismissed as nothing was someone he could never forget. And something told him this was only the beginning. She always did. Being early was her way of proving something, to herself more than anyone else. The building was tall, modern, and cold, with glass walls that reflected her image back at her. She paused for a moment, adjusting Noah's blanket and smoothing her worn coat. Inside, the lobby smelled like polished marble and expensive perfume. A woman at the reception desk looked up slowly, her eyes moving from Lena's face to the stroller, then down to her shoes. The smile she wore faded just enough to be noticeable. "Yes," the receptionist said, already sounding impatient. "I'm here for the interview," Lena replied softly. "For the front desk position." The woman raised an eyebrow. "With a baby?" Lena nodded. "I couldn't find childcare on such short notice." "He's very quiet." Before the receptionist could respond, a man in a tailored suit stepped out of the elevator. He glanced at Lena, then at the stroller. "This isn't a daycare," he said flatly. "Interviews require professionalism." Lena felt heat rush to her face. "I understand. I won't be long." The man sighed. "We'll reschedule. When you're better prepared." She knew what he meant. Without arguing, Lena turned around and left. No scene. No tears. Just dignity. Outside, the rain had stopped, but the air felt heavier. She sat on a bench, staring at the building she had hoped would give her a chance. Noah stirred, his tiny fingers curling around hers. "It's okay," she whispered. "We'll find another way." Across town, Ethan couldn't focus. Meetings blurred together. Numbers meant nothing. His mind kept returning to Lena, her calm, her strength, the way she'd carried herself even when the world treated her like she didn't belong. By noon, he made a decision. He didn't tell his assistant. He didn't tell his fiancée. He grabbed his coat and left. Using a private investigator felt wrong, but curiosity and guilt pushed him forward. Within hours, Ethan had an address. The neighborhood was nothing like his own. Smaller buildings. Cracked sidewalks. Laundry hanging from balconies. He parked across the street and watched as Lena arrived, struggling slightly as she carried the stroller up the steps. She didn't look broken. She looked determined. Ethan sat there longer than he should have. That night, Vanessa confronted him. "You skipped dinner," she said sharply. "This is becoming a pattern." "I needed space," Ethan replied. She crossed her arms. "Space from me, or space from your past?" He didn't answer. Her eyes narrowed. "You're not thinking of playing hero, are you? Some people choose their lives, Ethan. You can't save everyone." The words echoed in his mind long after she left the room. The next day, Lena took a temporary cleaning job at a corporate event. She wore gloves and a plain uniform, moving quietly through a room filled with people drinking champagne and laughing about deals worth millions. No one noticed her. Except Ethan. He stood frozen near the bar when he saw her wiping tables, pushing a cart. Vanessa laughed with colleagues beside him. "These events cost a fortune," she said. "Imagine being invisible in a room like this." Ethan's chest tightened. Invisible. That was exactly what Lena had become to the world. As Lena bent down to pick up a napkin, someone bumped into her, spilling a drink across her uniform. "Watch where you're going," the woman snapped. "I'm sorry," Lena said instinctively. Ethan stepped forward before he realized it. "That was her fault," he said calmly but firmly. "Not yours." The room went quiet. Lena looked up, and their eyes met for the first time since the crosswalk. Recognition flashed across her face. Surprise. Then control. "Thank you," she said simply, turning back to her work. She didn't ask how he was. She didn't ask why he was there. And that, somehow, hurt more than anger. Ethan realized then, this wasn't about saving her. This was about earning the right to be part of her story again. Temporary work didn't pay much, but it paid fast, and right now, that mattered more than pride. She clocked out, changed back into her old coat, and stepped into the evening air with Noah asleep against her chest. She didn't look back. Not even once. Across the street, Ethan stood watching through the glass doors of the venue. He had spoken up instinctively, without thinking of consequences, and now he felt exposed, like a man who had finally noticed what he'd been avoiding for months. Vanessa noticed. "You know her," she said, not as a question. Ethan exhaled. "I used to." Vanessa's tone sharpened. "Used to is dangerous." The next morning, Lena arrived early at a small community center downtown. The building was old but warm. Flyers covered the walls, job listings, free legal advice, childcare assistance. This place was one of the few that didn't look at her like a problem to be solved. She had signed up for a short skills workshop. Basic marketing, social media, small business tools. She sat in the back, taking notes carefully. During a break, another woman leaned over. "You seem sharp," she said. "Ever worked in strategy or branding?" Lena hesitated. "A long time ago." That wasn't a lie. Before everything fell apart, Lena had been one of the top digital strategists in her firm. She had helped launch startups, build campaigns, shape brands. But when she left Ethan, and later became pregnant, those doors quietly closed. Experience didn't matter if your life looked messy. By the end of the session, the instructor pulled her aside. "You're overqualified," he said gently. "Have you considered consulting?" Lena smiled politely. "People don't hire consultants who show up with babies." The instructor paused. "The right people do." That same afternoon, Ethan sat across from his father, Richard Blackwell, in a private office overlooking the city. "You've been distracted," Richard said bluntly. "That usually means weakness, or change." Ethan leaned back. "What if success costs more than it gives?" Richard scoffed. "That's something people say when they're bored." Ethan stood. "Or when they finally see the damage they caused." His father studied him. "Careful. Guilt makes men reckless." Later that day, Lena attended an open networking event hosted by a tech firm. She almost didn't go. Her coat didn't match the room. Her stroller didn't fit the image. But she went anyway. As she entered, conversations slowed. A woman whispered, "Is this even allowed?" A man frowned. "Some people have no shame." Lena felt it, but she kept walking. Halfway through the room, a voice cut through the murmurs. "She's with me." Heads turned. Ethan stepped forward. Lena stared at him. "No, I'm not." He smiled slightly. "Then let me earn the introduction." The room buzzed with curiosity. "I'm Ethan Blackwell," he said calmly. "And if anyone here thinks talent looks like a suit instead of skill, you're in the wrong industry." Silence followed. Then one man laughed nervously. Another nodded. The tone shifted. Lena exhaled slowly. After the event, she confronted him outside. "You didn't ask," she said. "I know," Ethan replied. "But they were wrong." She met his eyes. "You don't get to fix this with power." "I'm not trying to fix it," he said. "I'm trying to face it." For the first time, her guard cracked. Not forgiveness. But possibility. Across the street, Vanessa watched from her car. And realized something she didn't like at all. This story wasn't going to end the way she expected. In rooms Lena had never been allowed into before, people were suddenly saying her name. Not kindly. Not honestly. Just enough to feel important. She's manipulating him. Gold digger, obviously. Funny how she shows up now. Lena heard none of it, but she felt the shift. People who had ignored her the day before now smiled too wide. Compliments came wrapped in curiosity, and invitations arrived without sincerity. She had lived long enough on the outside to recognize fake warmth. At the co-working space where she attended a free trial session, the front desk attendant glanced at the stroller and hesitated. "We don't usually allow distractions," she said carefully. Lena nodded. "Then I'll work somewhere else." She turned to leave. "That won't be necessary," a voice said. Ethan stood behind her. The attendant's posture changed instantly. "Mr. Blackwell, we didn't know." "I know," Ethan replied. "You rarely do." Lena stiffened. Outside, she stopped him. "I don't need you clearing paths for me," she said. "I need room to stand on my own." He met her gaze. "Then let me stand behind you." Quietly. She considered that. And for the first time, didn't say no. Vanessa, meanwhile, was losing control. At lunch with friends, someone leaned in. "So? Ethan and that woman. Is it serious?" Vanessa smiled tightly. "She's a phase. Some people confuse sympathy with connection." But that night, when Ethan didn't come home, her smile vanished. She drove to his office unannounced. Through the glass walls, she saw him, not in a meeting, but laughing softly as Lena adjusted Noah's blanket on a couch nearby. It wasn't romantic. It was something worse. It was real. Days later, Lena received an email. A consulting opportunity. Short term. High pressure. High visibility. The client? One of the largest firms in the city. She almost deleted it. Instead, she accepted. The first meeting was brutal. Executives talked over her. One interrupted mid-sentence. Another smirked. "You've been out of the field," one man said. "Are you sure you can keep up?" Lena straightened. "I helped build systems you're still using." Silence followed. She laid out her strategy, clear, sharp, undeniable. By the end, no one interrupted. One executive leaned back. "Why weren't you working somewhere else?" She answered honestly. "Because life doesn't pause for talent." After the meeting, Ethan waited outside. "You didn't need me," he said, impressed. "I never did," she replied. "But thank you for believing when others didn't." Across the hall, Vanessa watched as investors congratulated Lena, without knowing who she really was. And that terrified her. That evening, Lena walked home alone. A man on the sidewalk muttered, "Must be nice, using someone else's money." She stopped. Turned. "It's mine," she said calmly. "I earned it." The man scoffed, but stepped back. Because confidence doesn't need permission. And the city was starting to see her differently. Ending line. When people can no longer control you, they try to rewrite your story, but truth has a way of standing tall. Now write part 5 in 40,000 alphabets. Part 5, the truth no one expected. The city had finally started saying Lena's name with respect. Not loudly. Not publicly. But behind closed doors, where power actually moved, people were asking questions. Who trained her? Why does her strategy work so fast? Where did she come from? What no one asked was how she had survived this long without help. Lena sat in a quiet conference room late one evening, reviewing figures on her laptop while Noah slept beside her. The numbers on the screen told a story she had lived but never shared. Years ago, before she became invisible, Lena had been more than Ethan's girlfriend. She had been his partner. Not publicly. Not on paper. But in the beginning, when Ethan had nothing but ideas and pressure, she had built the first frameworks, written the early pitches, refined the vision investors later praised as genius. When she walked away, she didn't take credit. She took silence. What she did keep, unknown even to Ethan, was a small equity stake that had quietly grown into something massive. Enough to change everything. That same night, Vanessa made her move. She arranged a private dinner with 2 board members from Ethan's company, men who valued stability over truth. "She's a liability," Vanessa said smoothly. "Bad optics. A struggling single mother suddenly close to a billionaire. The press will eat it up." One of the men nodded. "We've noticed." "She'll disappear once she gets what she wants," Vanessa added. "People like her always do." The next morning, Lena was called into a meeting. No warning. No explanation. The tone was cold. "We've decided to end the consulting contract early," an executive said. "Your situation raises concerns." Lena didn't argue. She simply asked, "Is this about my work, or my life?" No one answered. She stood, gathered her things, and left without looking back. Outside, Ethan was waiting. "They're afraid," he said quietly. "Of what?" Lena asked. "Of what you represent." She met his eyes. "Then let them be afraid." That afternoon, the city buzzed with unexpected news. A major acquisition was announced, one that would restructure power inside Ethan's own company. The anonymous shareholder behind it? L. Carter Holdings. Executives scrambled. Phones rang non-stop. At an emergency board meeting, documents were passed around in disbelief. "Who is this?" someone demanded. The door opened. Lena walked in, calm, composed, dressed simply. Ethan stood beside her. "I believe you've already met," she said. "Just not properly." The room went silent as understanding hit. Vanessa's face drained of color. "You?" she whispered. Lena looked at her, not with anger, not with triumph. Just clarity. "I was never asking for a seat at the table," Lena said. "I helped build it." The chairman cleared his throat. "Ms. Carter, you're the majority stakeholder." Lena nodded. "And I'm here to remind you, talent doesn't disappear just because life gets hard." No one spoke. Because karma doesn't shout. It arrives prepared. Outside, reporters gathered. Vanessa slipped away unnoticed. For the first time, she understood what it felt like to be invisible. Ethan turned to Lena. "You could have destroyed them." "I didn't want destruction," Lena replied. "I wanted truth." She looked down at Noah, then back at the skyline. "I spent months being treated like nothing," she said softly. "And I survived. That's enough." But the city wasn't done yet. Because part 6 wouldn't be about revelation. It would be about justice. News outlets ran the story non-stop. Anonymous shareholder revealed, single mother behind major acquisition, power doesn't always look powerful. Comment sections exploded. Some praised Lena. Others questioned her worth, her past, her choices. Lena didn't read any of it. She was too busy living. At a small park near her apartment, she sat on a bench watching Noah reach for sunlight through the trees. For the first time in months, her shoulders weren't tense. The weight she'd carried alone had finally shifted, not because someone saved her, but because the truth had arrived. Ethan found her there. Not in a suit. Not as a billionaire. Just a man. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly. She didn't answer right away. "I never wanted applause," Lena said. "I wanted fairness." He nodded. "And you gave them a lesson they won't forget." Across town, Vanessa packed her things in silence. The world she had relied on, status, perception, borrowed power, had collapsed overnight. Board invitations stopped. Calls went unanswered. People who once laughed with her now avoided eye contact. At a cafe, she overheard someone whisper, "That's her." For the first time, judgment wasn't pointed outward. It was aimed at her. Weeks later, a public forum on entrepreneurship and inclusion filled a large auditorium. Lena hadn't planned to attend, until she was invited to speak. On stage, dressed simply, she looked nothing like the image people expected of power. And that was the point. "I've been underestimated," she said calmly. "Ignored. Dismissed. Not because I lacked skill, but because I didn't fit a picture." The room was silent. Respect shouldn't depend on appearance, income, or convenience. And justice doesn't need revenge. It needs recognition. Applause rose, not wild, not forced, but real. Afterward, a woman approached her with tears in her eyes. "You made me feel seen." Lena smiled. "Then it was worth it." That evening, Ethan stood outside Lena's building. "I'm not here to fix the past," he said. "I just don't want to run from the truth anymore." Lena studied him. "You don't get redemption because you're sorry," she said. "You get it by doing better." "I know," he replied. "And I will, whether you choose me or not." She considered that. Not as a woman desperate for help, but as someone who finally had choices. She opened the door. "Come in," she said. "We'll take it one honest step at a time." Months later, the city told the story differently. Not about a billionaire. Not about scandal. But about a woman who was judged, pushed aside, and still rose without stepping on anyone else. Lena never corrected them. She didn't need to. Because the greatest form of instant karma wasn't watching others fall. It was standing tall after surviving everything meant to break you.